chocolate cream Oreo. The most amazing thing to happen to an Oreo in 89 years.
Remember 1983? Reagan was president, MTV actually played music videos, and we thought we had the world figured out. The bright neon colors, the revolutionary gadgets, the products that promised to make life easier and better. But here's the thing about the good old days. They weren't always that good. Behind those cheerful commercials and friendly packages, some of our most beloved everyday items were quietly dangerous. We trusted them completely. Hell, we had to. There was no internet to warn us otherwise. Today we're counting down 25 things that defined our youth that turned out to have a seriously dark side. If you lived through the Reagan era, you'll recognize every single one, and you might be shocked at what we now know. Let's take a trip back to when ignorance was bliss, and sometimes deadly. TV shows with dangerous stunts. Saturday mornings were sacred. We'd plant ourselves cross-legged in front of glowing TV screens, sugary cereal in hand, watching our heroes perform absolutely insane stunts without a single safety warning. The A-Team's explosive van crashes, Dukes of Hazzard launching cars over creeks, even Tom and Jerry showed characters surviving anvils to the head and walking away dizzy but fine. The message was crystal clear. Danger could be hilarious, pain was entertaining, and most importantly, anyone could survive anything with cartoon physics on their side. So naturally we tried everything. Backyard wrestling matches that would make WWE nervous, shopping cart races down steep hills, umbrella parachuting off garage roofs because Mary Poppins made it look so easy. We built ramps for our bikes that would launch us into orbit, or at least into our neighbors' bushes. Emergency rooms saw the predictable results every weekend: broken arms, concussions, and parents shaking their heads saying they got that idea from TV. Today's shows have more legal disclaimers than actual content. Do not attempt. Professional stunt performed on closed course. Seriously, your kid will die if they try this. But back then, pure, unfiltered inspiration for childhood disasters served up with our Saturday morning fruity pebbles. We didn't just watch our heroes, we became them, one trip to the ER at a time. Scented markers and toys, Mr. Sketch Markers, the gateway drug of elementary school art class. Those fat, colourful tubes promised aromatic adventures with every stroke. Cherry red that actually smelled like cherry pie. Grape purple that transported you to Welch's commercials. That mysterious black licorice scent that somehow smelled exactly right, even though none of us actually liked black licorice. We huffed those things like tiny addicts, passing them around the classroom for communal sniffing sessions. Teachers would find us comparing our favorites during art time. Smell this orange one? No, try the cinnamon. We practically got high off our school supplies and called it education. But markers were just the beginning. Strawberry shortcake dolls that reeked of artificial berries, scratch and sniff stickers that promised to smell like pizza or pickles, vanilla-scented erasers that made math homework slightly more tolerable. Everything had to smell like dessert, because apparently childhood wasn't sweet enough already. What we didn't know, and what nobody bothered to tell us, was that many of these delightful scents contained toluene, xylene, and other solvents that could cause headaches, dizziness, respiratory problems, or worse, with repeated exposure. Those harmless art supplies were basically delivering chemical cocktails straight to our developing brains. We were getting a contact high from our homework supplies, and the adults thought it was adorable. No wonder we loved art class so much. We were literally intoxicated by creativity. Some dangers smell exactly like childhood dreams. Hitchhiking culture. Before Uber, before cell phones, hell, before most people had answering machines, there was the thumb. Hitchhiking wasn't just for hippies and drifters, it was legitimate transportation for anyone needing to get somewhere without a car. College kids heading home for holidays would pack light and stick out their thumbs on highway on-ramps. Concert-goers would hitch rides to see Led Zeppelin or The Who. Even suburban teenagers would thumb rides to the mall or the local swimming hole. It wasn't considered dangerous. It was considered resourceful. Drivers would pull over for complete strangers, share their stories, offer food, and drop you off with genuine wishes for safe travels. It felt like community in motion, proof that America was still a place where people helped each other out. We met fascinating characters, heard incredible life stories, and learned that most people were fundamentally decent. The unspoken rules were simple: be polite, offer gas money, and don't be weird. Most rides ended with handshakes, sometimes even genuine friendships. It was beautiful human connection at 65 miles per hour. But reality had horror stories waiting in the shadows. Ted Bundy trolled highways for victims. The highway killer cases made national news. Too many missing person reports started with "last seen getting into a stranger's car." What began as innocent trust became a statistical game of Russian roulette. By the 1990s, hitchhiking had become synonymous with true crime documentaries and Nancy Grace specials. The age of highway innocence was officially over, murdered by a few predators who ruined it for everyone. We remember the good rides, the kind strangers, the sense of adventure, but we also learned that trust has limits and some risks aren't worth taking. Leaving kids in cars, just for a minute. "Stay here, I'll be right back." The universal parent phrase of the late 70s and early 80s. We'd sit obediently in the wood-paneled station wagon, windows cracked about 2 inches, reading comic books or playing with action figures while Mom ran into the grocery store or Dad grabbed his cigarettes from the convenience store. It wasn't neglect. It was standard operating procedure. Nobody called the cops. Nobody panicked. Nobody even looked twice at a car full of unattended children in a parking lot. It was just normal parenting in an era when kids were considered more durable and the world felt safer. We'd wait patiently sometimes for 20 or 30 minutes, entertaining ourselves with whatever toys we'd brought along. Sometimes we'd fall asleep. Sometimes we'd fight with our siblings. Mostly we'd just watch the world go by through slightly fogged windows, trusting that our parents would return soon. The dangers were invisible to us then. We didn't understand heat stroke, how quickly car temperatures could spike, or how little time it takes for tragedy to strike. We didn't know about opportunistic predators or how vulnerable we really were, sitting ducks in unlocked vehicles. Today you'd be arrested faster than you could say, "But I was just getting milk," and probably end up on the evening news as an example of parental negligence. Good Samaritans will call 911 if they see a child alone in a car for more than 60 seconds. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Some traditions deserve to die even if they seemed perfectly reasonable at the time. No child car seats or pathetic ones. Car seats in 1980 were glorified booster cushions with a flimsy vinyl strap that couldn't restrain a determined house cat, let alone a flying toddler in a car crash. Most families didn't bother with them at all. Kids just sat in the back seat like miniature adults, or, better yet, stood between the front seats like tiny co-pilots helping navigate. Babies rode in Mum's lap, supposedly cushioned by maternal love and careful driving. Toddlers bounced around the back seat freely during long trips, sometimes lying down for naps without any restraint whatsoever. We thought parental reflexes and defensive driving were sufficient protection against the laws of physics. The few car seats that existed looked like torture devices from a medieval dungeon, hard plastic shells with complicated strap systems that seemed designed by engineers who'd never actually met a child. Most parents gave up fighting with the installation and just hoped for the best. When mandatory car seat laws finally arrived in the mid-80s, parents complained loudly about government overreach and nanny state interference. We turned out fine without all this safety nonsense, they'd grumble, while reluctantly strapping their kids into what seemed like miniature space capsules. Now those same parents buy $400 NASA-engineered safety fortresses for their grandchildren with 5-point harness systems, side impact protection, and installation videos that require engineering degrees to understand. Progress is sometimes measured in the complexity of keeping children alive during simple car rides. We survived through luck, not wisdom, and the kids who didn't survive taught us lessons we should have learned sooner. Cigarette advertising everywhere. Flip through any magazine from 1982, Time, Newsweek, People, even Family, Circle, and count the cigarette advertisements. Full-page spreads featuring rugged Marlboro cowboys, sophisticated Virginia Slims women, and even doctors in white coats recommending specific brands for throat comfort and smooth satisfaction. These weren't subtle suggestions tucked away in small print. They were glamorous, full-color celebrations of smoking as the height of adult sophistication. Beautiful people in exotic locations, all united by the common thread of tobacco addiction presented as lifestyle choice. The Marlboro Man became an American icon representing rugged independence and masculine adventure. Virginia Slims told women, "You've come a long way, baby," linking cigarettes to female empowerment and liberation. Even cartoon camels wearing sunglasses made smoking look cool and fun. But these ads weren't just targeting adults making informed decisions. Those same magazines sat on every coffee table, in every doctor's office waiting room, and in every school library. We absorbed those messages daily from childhood. Smoking equals sophistication, rebellion, and adulthood worth aspiring to. Joe Camel wasn't an accident or coincidence, and he was a calculated assault on young minds designed by psychologists who understood exactly how to make cigarettes appealing to children. The tobacco companies knew precisely what they were doing, and internal documents later proved it. We grew up marinating in pro-smoking propaganda so sophisticated it would make modern advertisers jealous. Every magazine, every billboard, every TV commercial before 9 p.m. sold us the same lie. Smoking was glamorous, sexy, and harmless. Big Tobacco didn't just sell cigarettes. They sold dreams wrapped in carcinogenic packaging. Fast food, toys with dangerous parts. Happy Meal toys were the ultimate childhood currency in the early 80s. We'd beg our parents to take us to McDonald's not for the food, but for those little plastic treasures that came in colorful boxes. Collecting entire sets became our obsession, trading duplicates with friends like miniature Wall Street brokers dealing in plastic commodities. The toys were amazing. Detailed figurines, wind-up racers, tiny puzzles that actually worked. They felt substantial, complex, interesting. Not like the oversized, dumbed-down toys kids get today, but intricate little machines that sparked imagination and creativity. But those same toys were basically choking hazard roulette, disguised as childhood joy. Tiny wheels that popped off and disappeared into carpet fibers. Small figurines with detachable heads, perfect for blocking airways. Spring-loaded mechanisms that could launch projectiles into unsuspecting eyes. Parts so small they seemed designed by people who'd never actually observed children playing. The recalls were constant but quietly handled. No social media to spread panic. No 24-hour news cycle to amplify every danger. Companies would simply stop including certain toys, replace them with improved versions, and hope nobody noticed the pattern. McDonald's would quietly pull toys that had sent too many kids to emergency rooms. Burger King would redesign their premium offerings after parental complaints, and the cycle would continue with the next month's promotional tie-in. Today's Happy Meal toys are practically indestructible. Oversized, rounded, tested by teams of child development experts and safety engineers. They're boring compared to our intricate death traps, but nobody's choking on them either. Sometimes progress means trading wonder for safety. And sometimes that's exactly the right trade to make. Unsupervised playground adventures. Be home when the streetlights come on. That single sentence contained the entire GPS tracking system, parental supervision protocol, and emergency contact method of 1985. We'd disappear to the local park or school playground for hours. No adults, no supervision, just pure Lord of the Flies, freedom with monkey bars and swing sets. And we absolutely loved every unsupervised minute of it. We'd spin the merry-go-round until someone puked, see who could jump highest off the swings at full speed, and establish complex social hierarchies based on who could make it across the monkey bars without falling. Those playgrounds were our concrete kingdoms, and we ruled them like miniature warlords with scraped knees and grass-stained clothes. The older kids taught younger ones the unwritten rules, how to pump your legs for maximum swing height, which slide was fastest, where to hide when the bullies showed up. We learned negotiation, conflict resolution, and basic physics through trial and error, with gravity as our harshest teacher. But predators knew about those empty parks too. They understood that unattended children were easy targets, that busy playgrounds full of kids without adult supervision were hunting grounds. The growing number of missing children's faces on milk cartons became a grim reminder that our paradise had serpents hiding in the shadows. Stranger danger became a household phrase. Parents started organizing supervised play dates instead of releasing us into the wild. The era of complete childhood freedom slowly died under the weight of too many horror stories and cable news panic. We gained safety, but lost something indefinable. That sense of independence, self-reliance, and earned confidence that comes from navigating the world without adult intervention. No bike helmets ever. Bike helmets were for motorcycle riders, professional racers, and anxious wimps. Real kids felt the wind whipping through their hair as they pedaled furiously down steep hills, jumped homemade plywood ramps, and raced through neighborhoods with reckless abandon that would terrify modern parents. A skinned knee was a badge of honor. A bike crash was a learning experience. Getting back on after wiping out showed character and determination. We wore our scars like medals from the suburban wars, proof that we'd tested our limits and survived. Head injuries? We called them getting your bell rung and walked it off after seeing stars for a few minutes. Concussion protocols didn't exist in our vocabulary. If you could walk, remember your name, and weren't actively bleeding from your ears, you were fine to get back on and ride home. The worst injuries were reserved for the most spectacular crashes, flying over handlebars, catching wheels in sewer grates, or colliding with parked cars during high-speed pursuits. Even then, broken arms and legs were temporary inconveniences, not life-altering tragedies. Now we know better about traumatic brain injuries, the cumulative effects of multiple concussions, and how fragile developing skulls really are. Every suburban kid today looks like they're preparing for the X Games just to ride to school, wrapped in protective gear that would make astronauts jealous. But they'll never know the pure, terrifying joy of flying down a hill with nothing but prayer, momentum, and the absolute certainty that they were invincible. Some experiences can't be replicated safely. Roller skating without any protection. 4 polyurethane wheels, lace-up leather boots with chunky rubber toe stops, and 0 safety equipment. Roller skating in the late 70s and early 80s was pure freedom on wheels, until gravity reminded you who was really in charge of physics. We'd race down hills at speeds that would make professional skaters nervous, skate backwards through crowds just to show off, and attempt tricks that would make Tony Hawk question our sanity. The local roller rink was our training ground, but the real adventures happened on sidewalks in parking lots and anywhere else we could find smooth concrete. Road rash became our unwanted fashion accessory. Those distinctive scrapes from sliding across asphalt at high speed marked us as serious skaters who pushed boundaries. Broken wrists from catching ourselves during falls were character-building experiences, not preventable injuries. We'd practice for hours, perfecting our technique through pain and repetition. The kids who could skate backwards while doing tricks became neighborhood legends. The ones who attempted jumps off curbs and stairs became cautionary tales, but we admired their courage even while visiting them in emergency rooms. Today's kids are wrapped in more protective gear than medieval knights: wrist guards, knee pads, elbow pads, helmets, and sometimes full body armor just to navigate a skating rink. They look ridiculous, but they're not leaving skin samples on the pavement. But they'll never experience that pure adrenaline rush of flying across concrete with nothing but skill and luck protecting them from disaster. Some thrills require a little blood to earn properly. Baby oil sunbathing madness. Summer goals in 1982 were simple: get as dark as humanly possible, as fast as possible, by any means necessary. Sunscreen was for tourists, children, and people who clearly didn't understand how tanning worked. Real sun worshippers used baby oil, and if you were really serious, you'd add iodine for extra browning intensity. We'd spread aluminum foil reflectors on the ground to maximize UV exposure, timing our rotations like human rotisserie chickens. SPF ratings were meaningless numbers on bottles we ignored. Sun protection factor might as well have stood for "some people are fragile," because we certainly weren't. The goal wasn't just a tan, it was a deep golden bronze that announced to the world that you'd spent serious time perfecting your color. Pale skin was a sign of indoor living, of missing out on summer's greatest achievement. We'd compare tan lines like battle scars, proof of dedication to the cause. Baby oil turned our skin into solar magnets, attracting and intensifying every UV ray for maximum damage, tanning efficiency. We'd lay motionless for hours, occasionally flipping like pancakes to ensure even coverage, basting ourselves in what was essentially cooking oil designed for infants. When the inevitable sunburn came, and oh did it come, we'd call it base tan development and power through the pain. Peeling skin was just the cocoon stage before the beautiful butterfly tan emerged. Dermatologists now treat our generation like walking textbooks of sun damage, pointing to our age spots, wrinkles, and suspicious moles as examples of what not to do. Those golden tans became premature aging, skin cancer scares, and expensive dermatology appointments. We literally cooked ourselves for fashion and thought we looked great doing it. Kids buying firecrackers. Corner convenience stores sold Black Cat firecrackers, M80s, and bottle rockets to anyone with pocket change and questionable judgment. No age restrictions, no safety lectures, no background checks, just explosives and matches handed to children because what could possibly go wrong? The summer before 4th of July, we'd pool our allowance money to buy arsenals of small explosives. Black Cats came in long strings that could be lit for extended celebrations. M80s promised bigger bangs and more impressive craters in dirt. Bottle rockets offered the thrill of aerial bombardment with unpredictable trajectories. We'd blow up mailboxes, postal service, terrorize neighborhood cats, and see who could hold an M80 the longest before throwing it. Singed eyebrows and temporarily deafened ears were considered normal summer fashion statements, proof that we'd celebrated America's independence properly. The really adventurous kids would tape multiple firecrackers together, creating homemade explosives that probably violated several federal laws. We'd compete to see who could make the biggest crater, the loudest bang, or the most impressive destruction of Mom's flower pots. Looking back, we were basically junior domestic terrorists with patriotic intentions and access to low-grade explosives. The fact that we didn't blow ourselves up entirely was a miracle of statistical probability rather than wisdom or safety consciousness. Emergency rooms knew to stock up on burn treatments and hearing aids every summer. Parents would shake their heads at our injuries, but rarely prevented us from buying more ammunition for next weekend's suburban warfare. Today, you need permits, licenses, supervision, and signed waivers just to buy sparklers. But for one glorious decade, American children had unrestricted access to explosives, and somehow most of us kept all our fingers. Ultra-realistic toy guns. Toy guns in the 1970s and early 80s looked exactly like the real thing, because that was entirely the point. Metal construction, wooden grips, working mechanisms that clicked and snapped with satisfying realism. Some even had chrome finishes and moving parts that mirrored actual firearms. We'd stage elaborate battles in public parks, pointing these authentic-looking weapons at each other without a care in the world. Cops and robbers, war games, Western shootouts, all played with toys that could fool adults from reasonable distances. The attention to detail was impressive and terrifying. Toy revolvers had spinning chambers, plastic machine guns had realistic sound effects, cap guns produced smoke and noise that mimicked actual gunfire. We wanted authenticity in our play, and manufacturers delivered it without considering consequences. Police officers couldn't tell the difference from 50 feet away, and sometimes they didn't wait to find out. Training manuals didn't cover, is that child holding a real weapon or an incredibly realistic fake one? Because nobody thought that would become a common scenario. Tragic mistakes happened with heartbreaking regularity. Kids died because their toys looked too real. Parents buried children who were just playing make-believe with the wrong props. Headlines told stories that should never have been written. The toy industry finally responded with orange tips, neon colors, and obviously fake designs, but only after too many families learned the difference between realistic play and deadly misunderstanding. Some games aren't worth the risk. Some realism costs too much. Completely unfiltered tap water. Turn the kitchen faucet. Listen to the pipes rattle and groan. Fill up a tall glass with whatever came out and drink it without question or concern. That was the complete water quality control system for most American families in the late 1970s and early 1980s. No filters, no bottles shipped from pristine mountain springs, no water quality reports posted on refrigerators, just tap water, sometimes clear, sometimes slightly cloudy, occasionally rust-colored, but always assumed to be safe because it came from the city, and cities wouldn't poison their own residents, right? We'd drink straight from garden hoses during summer afternoons, fill up at public fountains without hesitation, and gulp down whatever the school cafeteria served in those little paper cups. If it was wet and didn't smell obviously wrong, it was good enough for us. The funny aftertastes, metallic hints, and occasional weird smells were just character, proof that our water had personality, unlike the boring, sterile stuff they'd probably serve in fancy places. We developed sophisticated palettes for distinguishing between different types of municipal mediocrity, but beneath that everyday clarity lurked invisible contaminants that would make modern parents panic. Lead leaching from aging pipes, industrial runoff from nearby factories, agricultural pesticides creeping downstream, and chemical byproducts from overwhelmed treatment facilities. Health risks accumulated quietly over years. Developmental delays in children, kidney problems, long-term cancer risks that wouldn't show up for decades. The scariest part was that most families had no idea anything was wrong until the damage was already done. Today we install elaborate under-sink filtration systems, buy bottled water by the case, and obsessively track city water quality reports like their stock market updates. But back then, trust came standard with every glass. We used to say, if it comes out clear, it must be clean. Turns out some dangers don't announce themselves with color, smell, or taste. Some just wait patiently to collect their debt years later. Smoking everywhere. Smoking or non-smoking section? The restaurant hostess would ask with complete seriousness, as if second-hand smoke respected imaginary boundaries drawn by management policy. Commercial airplanes had ashtrays built into every armrest and allowed passengers to light up throughout flights, turning pressurized cabins into flying smoke lounges. Family restaurants reeked of cigarette smoke that clung to everything: clothes, hair, food, memories. Doctors' offices had ashtrays in waiting rooms. Grocery stores allowed smoking in the aisles. Movie theaters sold cigarettes at concession stands and let people smoke during films. We marinated in tobacco smoke from birth to bedtime in every public space Americans gathered. It was the atmospheric background of daily life, as normal and unquestioned as air conditioning or background music. Children grew up thinking cigarette smell was just what adults smelled like, the way restaurants were supposed to smell, how airplanes and buses and offices naturally existed. We didn't know that our normal was slowly poisoning us. The idea that second-hand smoke was dangerous seemed revolutionary and controversial. The tobacco lobby fought tooth and nail to keep their profitable clouds of cash flowing, funding studies that proved environmental tobacco smoke was harmless. Smoking sections were separated from non-smoking areas by nothing more than optimism and occasionally a decorative plant, as if carcinogens understood property boundaries and politely stayed in designated zones. Flight attendants served meals and beverages while dodging cigarette smoke in cramped airplane cabins. Restaurant workers spent entire careers breathing concentrated tobacco fumes. Children sat in smoking sections because that's where the only available table was located. Public health advocates fought for decades to clear the air, literally and figuratively. But it took overwhelming scientific evidence and countless lawsuits before we finally admitted that maybe, just maybe, breathing other people's cigarette smoke wasn't great for our health. Now, stepping into a smoke-free restaurant or airplane feels perfectly normal, but it wasn't always that way. Progress sometimes smells like fresh air. They sat in every diaper bag and kitchen cabinet, thick, clear glass baby bottles that felt solid and dependable in nervous parent hands. Before BPA-free plastics revolutionized infant feeding, glass was the gold standard for delivering milk to babies, trusted by pediatricians and preferred by mothers who wanted the best for their children. These weren't just feeding tools, they were family heirlooms, passed down through generations and built to last decades, heavy, substantial, with measurements etched clearly into thick glass walls. They felt serious and medical, like equipment designed by people who understood infant nutrition. But there was something nobody talked about enough: the inevitable shattering. Glass baby bottles without protective sleeves or safety wraps were accidents waiting to happen, disasters disguised as dinner time, a simple slip from tired parent hands during 3 a.m. feedings, a fussy baby knocking the bottle out of mom's grip during feeding struggles. When those bottles broke, they didn't just crack politely, they exploded into jagged, dangerous shards across nursery floors, kitchen counters, and sometimes into cuts on tiny hands or parental fingers. Emergency room trips for glass cuts became routine parental experiences that nobody discussed in parenting books. Panicked midnight drives to hospitals with bleeding babies and glass-embedded wounds. Parents learning to carefully sweep up microscopic fragments while comforting screaming infants and wondering how something so essential could be so dangerous. We trusted the ritual, the tradition, the medical recommendations without questioning the basic physics of giving fragile containers to tired people caring for squirming babies. Glass plus exhaustion plus sudden movements equals predictable disasters. Modern bottles come with silicone sleeves, made from tempered glass designed to crumble safely, or use advanced BPA-free plastics that won't shatter at all. Safety wrapped around the same feeding experience, protecting families from dangers we once accepted as normal. But for many parents, those old glass bottles still echo in memory, beautiful, dangerous reminders of how love and risk once came in the same package. Mercury thermometers in every home. They occupied a place of honor in every family medicine cabinet, slim, elegant glass tubes filled with liquid silver that somehow measured fever with scientific precision. Mercury thermometers were the trusted medical instruments of American households, recommended by doctors and relied upon by worried parents checking children's temperatures. The ritual was sacred and precise. Shake it down below 98.6, slip it under the tongue, wait exactly 3 minutes while trying not to bite down on fragile glass, then read the thin silver line against tiny black numbers printed like secret medical code. No batteries required, no digital displays to confuse, no plastic parts to break. Just glass, mercury, and the faith that this elegant simplicity could diagnose illness and guide treatment decisions. They felt medical and serious, like tools used in real hospitals by real doctors. But tucked inside those trusted instruments was danger we never imagined. That beautiful, shimmering silver liquid was elemental poison waiting patiently for the inevitable accident that would release it into our homes. When mercury thermometers broke, and they always broke eventually, the elemental mercury scattered like fascinating, toxic marbles across bathroom floors and vanished into floorboard cracks. Children would play with the rolling beads, mesmerized by liquid metal that moved like science fiction magic. Parents would carefully sweep up visible mercury droplets and assume the danger was contained, not understanding that invisible vapor continued rising from microscopic residue embedded in carpet fibers and wooden floors. We had no idea we were inviting neurotoxins into our medicine cabinets. Mercury vapor is odorless, invisible, and devastating to developing brains, especially dangerous for pregnant women and young children. Every broken thermometer became a small environmental disaster that could affect families for months or years. By the early 2000s, digital thermometers and mercury disposal programs finally retired these elegant death traps from American medicine cabinets. But for decades, we kept literal poison in our bathrooms, thinking it was precision healthcare in a tube. Sometimes the most trusted tools carry the greatest hidden risks. And that old mercury thermometer taught us that medical tradition isn't always medical wisdom. Riding in pickup truck beds. Pure summer evening magic. Piling into the back of someone's pickup truck, legs dangling over the tailgate, hair whipping in warm wind as we cruised to the lake, drive-in movie, or just around town showing off our mobile freedom. No seatbelts, no protective sides, no safety features except youthful invincibility and absolute faith in the driver's skill. We'd stand up to wave at other cars, lean over the sides to feel maximum wind resistance, and treat that truck bed like our personal parade float rolling through suburban America. It felt like flying, the closest thing to superhero transportation available to ordinary teenagers. The view was unobstructed, the breeze was perfect, and the sense of adventure was intoxicating. Much better than being crammed inside a stuffy car interior with adults and their boring conversations. Pickup truck beds became party venues, transportation systems, and social gathering spaces all in one. We'd bring blankets for comfort, coolers for drinks, and friends for company. The journey was often more fun than the destination, but physics doesn't care about nostalgia or teenage confidence. A sudden stop could turn passengers into projectiles, a sharp turn might eject riders onto asphalt, a minor fender bender could become a catastrophic human launching system. The accidents were brutal when they happened. Head injuries, road rash, broken bones, and worse. But somehow, each tragedy felt like a rare exception rather than a predictable consequence of putting unrestrained humans in the back of moving vehicles. Eventually, laws changed and liability concerns made pickup bed passengers illegal in most places. Insurance companies stopped covering injuries. Parents got nervous about lawsuits and emergency room bills. Many of us learned that gravity is undefeated and asphalt is unforgiving. But the memories of wind-whipped freedom still feel worth the risk, even though we know better now. Some experiences are too dangerous to repeat, but too magical to regret. No rear seat belts required. Backseat passengers in the 1970s and early 80s were essentially free-range humans, unrestrained and unsupervised in the rear compartments of family vehicles. We'd lie down during long trips, play elaborate games across bench seats, fight with siblings, or nap peacefully without any thought of restraint systems. Seatbelts were for the cautious adults in front seats, the ones who worried about unlikely accident scenarios. Kids in back were protected by parental driving skills, divine providence, and the mistaken belief that rear seats were somehow naturally safer than front seats. During family road trips, the back seat became our mobile playground. We'd stretch out completely, build pillow forts, play board games on makeshift tables, and treat the car interior like a living room that happened to be moving at highway speeds. The physics were brutal but hidden from everyday awareness. In crashes, unrestrained passengers became human missiles, injuring themselves and everyone else in the vehicle. But we didn't connect those dots until statistics became undeniable and horror stories accumulated. When rear seatbelt laws finally passed, many families grumbled about government overreach and unnecessary regulation. "We survived just fine without all this safety nonsense," parents would complain, while reluctantly buckling confused children into restraints that felt foreign and restrictive. Now, buckling up is automatic muscle memory that feels strange when forgotten. But for years, clicking that rear seatbelt felt like admitting defeat to paranoid authorities who didn't understand that careful drivers didn't need backup safety systems. We learned the hard way that loving parents and defensive driving aren't enough protection against physics, drunk drivers, and mechanical failures. Sometimes accidents happen to good people, and seatbelts are the difference between walking away and being carried away. Amazing how many obvious safety measures had to be learned through preventable tragedies and legislative battles rather than common sense and basic physics understanding. Lawn darts, jarts. You remember pulling them out of the garage on a sunny Saturday? Those long, metal-tipped darts packed in a flimsy plastic case with brightly coloured fins. The game was simple. Toss the dart underhand, land it in the plastic ring on the lawn. It felt like horseshoes, but with more flair. We called them jarts, and for a while they were the crown jewel of backyard gatherings. Kids loved them, dads showed off with precision throws, and every barbecue seemed to end with a round. No batteries, no screens, just fresh air and laughter. But we didn't realize we were playing with danger, literally. Turns out each dart was a mini spear, sharp enough to pierce the ground. And tragically, much more. By the late 1980s, lawn darts were linked to thousands of serious injuries, including several child fatalities. Emergency room visits stacked up. The Consumer Product Safety Commission stepped in. And by 1988, jarts were banned in the US, pulled from store shelves forever. We didn't see it at the time. It was just a game, one we all played, without thinking twice. Looking back, it's hard not to shudder a little. The same dart we tossed with glee had the power to take a life. It wasn't reckless parenting or bad kids. It was a different time. One where danger wore a smile and came in a rainbow-coloured box. But that wasn't the only thing we trusted too much. Candy cigarettes. You probably got your first pack right from the corner store, maybe tucked near the gum or slipped into a birthday party favour bag. Thin white sticks, chalky sweet, with a red-dyed tip to mimic a glowing ember. If you were lucky, they came in a little flip-top box that looked just like the real thing. And just like that, you felt a little older. a little cooler. We didn't think much of it back then. It was pretend, right? Just candy. No harm in holding one between your fingers, taking a dramatic puff, then crunching down with a sugar snap. Every kid did it. We imitated our favorite movie stars, TV detectives, or even, let's be honest, our own parents. But we didn't realize we were being primed. Studies later showed what candy cigarette makers wouldn't say out loud. These innocent-looking treats normalized smoking. They made it feel familiar, acceptable, cool. Kids who played with candy cigarettes were far more likely to pick up the real thing later. And many did. We thought we were just playing grown up. But the candy wasn't the only thing sweet, and yeah, the marketing was too. And it worked. Today, most major brands won't touch them. They've been banned in several countries, but for those of us who grew up with them, it's a strange memory how something so small, so sugary, could carry such a heavy cost, and it makes you wonder, what else did we mistake for harmless fun? Metal playgrounds on asphalt. You remember the sound, don't you? That hollow clang when your sneakers hit the rungs of a metal ladder and the low whoosh of air as you slid down a shiny steel chute. Those old playgrounds were built tough. Towering jungle gyms, merry-go-rounds that spun faster than a dizzy spell, and monkey bars that felt like Olympic training equipment. They stood like monuments in city parks and schoolyards, gleaming under the sun, sometimes too much sun. If you ever touched that slide in the middle of July, you learned real quick. It could brand you. We're talking second-degree burns right there on the playground. And underneath it all, asphalt, hard, unforgiving blacktop. If you fell, and you did, there was no cushion, no rubber mulch, just gravity and grit. Back then we brushed it off. A scraped knee meant you were playing hard. A broken arm? Well, maybe you'd get to pick the color of your cast. We thought we were tough, and in many ways we were. But the truth is, those playgrounds weren't just challenging, they were dangerous. Emergency rooms saw a flood of kids with concussions, fractures, and worse. It took decades before safety standards caught up. Padded surfaces, plastic slides, rounded edges. We didn't know it then, but we were testing the limits of our bodies on equipment that wasn't made with our safety in mind. And while the memories are vivid, the scars, manbatita for some, still are too. Funny how we thought we were just playing. Turns out we were surviving. Lead-based toy paint. You remember those toys? The ones that came in colours so bright, they practically glowed. Fire engine reds, sunshine yellows, sky blues that felt alive in your hands. Toy trucks, building blocks, spinning tops. They weren't just playthings, they were treasures. You might even remember the smell, that faint, plasticky scent when you opened the box. New, exciting, safe. Or so we thought. See, back then no one told us those brilliant colours were hiding something dangerous. Lead mixed into the paint to make hues bolder, more durable, longer lasting. It worked. Those toys sure lasted, in more ways than one. But we didn't know that chipping, flaking paint could mean toxic dust. We didn't know that when a toddler gnawed on the corner of a block or sucked on a painted rattle, they were ingesting something that could hurt their brain, impair development, even change the course of their life. It wasn't until the late 70s and early 80s that the alarm bells really started ringing. Studies piled up, doctors warned, and finally, lead paint was banned from toys. Decades too late for some. Looking back, it's chilling. Those bright, joyful objects we loved were ticking time bombs. And while we hold on to the memories, we now know sometimes danger comes in the prettiest package. Gasoline with lead, pulling up to the pump used to feel routine. The gas station bell dinged, the attendant smiled, and the nozzle clicked into place with a satisfying thunk. You might even remember the smell. Sharp, strong, oddly comforting. We didn't think twice, we were just filling up, but every tank of lead gasoline we pumped came with a hidden cost, in one we didn't see, smell, or feel right away. Lead was added to gas to improve engine performance, to stop knocking and keep our cars running smooth. And it worked. For the cars. For us? Not so much. That invisible exhaust spewed into neighborhoods, school zones, front yards. It settled on sidewalks and playgrounds, worked its way into lungs, into bloodstreams, especially children's. Scientists would later call it one of the biggest public health disasters of the century. Brain damage, developmental delays, behavioral issues, all quietly fueled by something we thought was harmless. By the 1990s, unleaded gas became the norm. But the damage had been done. It's wild to think that every cheerful road trip, every ride to the grocery store came with a price no one told us we were paying. We were chasing freedom, speed, convenience. And all the while, we were breathing in something our bodies would never forget. Asbestos in home insulation. You might remember the cool feel of the basement floor, or the way the attic smelled in summer. Dusty, warm, with that faint mineral scent clinging to the air. Back then, we didn't question what was behind the walls. We trusted that if a house stood tall and kept us warm, it was doing its job. Turns out some of those homes were harboring a quiet danger. Asbestos, hailed as a miracle material for decades, fireproof, durable, cheap. It lined our attics, wrapped our pipes, and fluffed between our walls like protective cotton candy. Only it wasn't harmless. We didn't know then that the tiny fibers, once disturbed, could lodge deep in the lungs, invisible and untraceable. We didn't know about mesothelioma, a cancer that often waited decades to reveal itself, or that builders and workers, even our own parents, were breathing in the risk daily, unknowingly paying the price for our comfort. By the time the dangers became undeniable, it was too late for many. Regulations followed, but the legacy of asbestos still lingers in old homes, a ghost in the insulation. And yet we look back with such innocence. We thought we were safe, tucked into bed under that roof. But even the walls had secrets, ones that remind us how progress sometimes comes with a painful echo. Looking back, some of it feels unbelievable. Lawn darts, candy cigarettes, riding without seat belts. We didn't think twice back then, but now we know better. We weren't reckless, just trusting. We assumed what was sold to us was safe, and in that trust we learned some hard lessons. These memories remind us not just of how we lived, but how far we've come, and maybe how important it is to keep asking questions, even about the things that seem harmless. Thanks for taking this journey with us. For more eye-opening stories from the past, check out the rest of our playlist. There's so much more to remember and re-examine.